Hi, everyone, again. It's Suzanne. We are a little late getting started this morning, just a little mix up
Oops.
in
I just
topics.
realized my audio was off. Okay. Hi, everyone, again. It's Susie.
Yeah, I got it. Um, okay, so sorry again for the late start. So today we're going to talk about web forms. This is a web form class. So apologies if you're tuning in for users in control, but we switch classes. Users in control will be conducted on Thursday afternoon at 1 o'clock. So today it's all about web forms, and we're going to talk about web forms, how to create one, and how to embed it on your site. Okay, so let me just start with my couple things for. That's not it. Just a couple housekeeping things because I can't rely on my memory. I need my paper. Okay, so just to kind of talk about the class format, we're going to be here for about an hour. For the first 45 minutes, we'll be going over web forms and talking through that topic. There is a chat window on the right side of your screen. If you're on a mobile device, it should be there as well. This is our only form of communication for the classroom. So if you have any questions or any issues, you can't hear, any kind of technical issues or any questions on the material as I'm going over it, please feel free to type a chat in the chat window. I do my best to keep an eye on it and try to answer them as they come up. If I do miss any, we will have about the last 15 minutes of class to go over any questions that I missed or any additional questions that you might have. We will also keep the chat window up for a little bit longer after the class is over so that it's still live and you can come back and ask any questions within that time period. So that is our way of communicating. If you have any resolution or speed issues, if the streaming isn't looking good, you can always adjust the resolutions using the gear wheel in the lower right corner of the video. We do recommend leaving it set to auto, but that's something that you can use to try to adjust the speed if the resolution or if you're having any issues. Okay, so I think that is all I need to review before we get started. And then we're going to jump into web forms. So let me go ahead and go to my screen share. Okay, we don't want to be looking at that. Here we go. Okay. So I'm logged into Zoho. Okay. So I'm logged into okay. I'm just looking at the chat window to see what was there. So I'm logged into our Zoho training account, and like I said, we're going to go over web forms today. So the first thing I want to talk about is what is a web form and why would you use it? So a web form is a way that you can create basically an input form on your website where if your website visitors fill out the form and submit it, it will create a record in Zoho. You can either create a lead, a contact, or a case record with a web form. So the first step in creating your web form is thinking through what information that you want to capture on the web form. So we can look at just a basic contact form where we're talking first name, last name, email address, maybe a message field, to something more complex where you're actually trying to capture more data. Maybe you're trying to capture an address field. Maybe you're trying to capture some information from them as far as what specifically they are looking for from you. So you just need to think through what that information is on your form. And the first step would be, if you don't already have the fields, you'll need to create those fields on your module. So just a little kind of best practice tip here. You don't want to make the form too heavy so that it's a lot of information that they need to fill out because people might bail in the middle. So the most important thing is you want to capture that lead information and get it into your system so that you can follow up with them. So as you're designing your form, you want to think of what's the minimum information that I can work with here, and then to follow up with them later and get additional information. But you got to walk that balance of getting enough information but not making it too cumbersome to fill out. Okay, that's my little best practice tip for the day. So let's start. So again, think about what fields, and your first step, which is kind of a pre-step to this class, would be to add those fields into your module. If you don't know how to add fields to your module, we do have classes on that. So please tune in for that as well, but we just don't really have the time to address that as well in here. All right, so web forms. We're gonna hit start with the setup icon in the upper left-hand corner. Click on that. That gets us into our setup area. And the web forms is under developer space. So it's the lower left or lower right-hand corner towards the bottom of the list is web forms. So we're going to click on that. And any web forms that have already been created will be listed here. And here are, here's the modules that you can create web forms for. So the leads, contacts, and cases are here. Those are the three that I mentioned at the beginning of class. And those are the three standard modules that we have in our system. We also have some additional custom modules, which is why they're showing up in this list. So if you add custom modules, you can create a web form for those custom modules as well. But as far as using the system out of the box, the three standard modules that you can create a web form for are the leads, contacts, and cases. Okay, so we've got an example here of a general contact form that's already been created in a previous class. So you can always, actually, I'm going to start with creating a new web form. So we'll circle back around to show how you edit and change a web form once you've created it. So to start, we're going to hit create web form. And this brings us into our field, our tool palette to set up our web form. So I have some options here as far as formatting, and we'll get to that in a second. But the first thing you're going to want to do is decide what fields you want to have on your form and pull them over. So it's a drag and drop interface to just grab a field and pull it over. The reason why these two fields are sitting there is because in our system, they're currently marked as required. So any required fields that you have in your module when you first come into the form will be on your form by default. If they're, say you realize as you get in here that, not everybody that's going to fill out this form will be associated with a company. Maybe you're servicing both businesses and individuals. So it doesn't make sense for a company to be required. So at this point, you would need to either, cancel. I mean, we haven't really done anything except for hit the button. So at this point, we would cancel out of here and go and change that field to not be required. Okay. So we're just gonna run with that for now. But I just wanted to mention that. So this is a drag and drop interface, like I said. So I want to put first name on the form. I'm going to drag first name over. These are also drag and drop once I get them over here. So I can say first name, last name, company, email. And so I want to have them be able to fill out some kind of a message to me as to why they're filling out my form. So I can use the description field for that and drag and drop that onto the form. Okay, so that's pretty, that's all there is to that. It's a drag and drop interface to get your fields on the form. A couple other things to note. So some of our key fields in the leads module are the source and status. So for status, I want to set this to something when it comes into my system, but they don't need to see that. So that's not something they're filling out. So I want to make this a hidden field. So to do that, once I put a field on the form, I click the gear wheel, and I can do a couple excuse me, and then I can do a couple things. I can mark it as a hidden field, which is what we're going to do with this one. I can make it required, or I can add a help link, or I can also change the label. So for this particular one, I'm going to mark it as a hidden field, and I'm going to set my default to not contacted. And what that means is that, so they fill out the form, it comes into my system, and I want them to be sitting there as not contacted, so that I can use that potentially in workflow or lists or other things to know who are my new leads that still need to be contacted. Okay, so you can put fields as hidden fields on the form so that you get them in the record. It's nothing that the visitor needs to fill out, but it's information that you need to have on the record to like I said, maybe control workflow or be able to pull them into a list. Okay. Another good one to have on forms is your lead source. So we can pull that on and change the label of that to something like, how did you find us? And your lead source field, then, it should already be set up to have all of the various marketing strategies that you're currently using, so that when they come to your website and fill out a form, you can gather some information based from them to understand how they knew about you. So if you had an ad, or if you have did an email blast, or whatever you're using to try to attract new business and new leads, you can get that feedback from them there. Okay. It's also good practice to tag your your web form with some kind of an indicator to let you know that this is where the lead came from. So what I do for a lot of our clients is we create a custom field called record source, and record source generally has 3 different values. It has manually, so that means that it was put in manually. It has imported, so you can, if you're importing a bunch of leads, you can mark that record source as imported. And it has web form. So we don't have that in our system right now. I will add that at the end of this class, so that the next time I do this class, I will have that available to me to put it on. But I would put that on just like I did lead status. I would drag that onto the form and mark that as a hidden field and set that to web form. So again, then when a lead record gets created from this form, it comes into my system and it already has the record source set as web form. So that way I can again pull a list and see what are all my leads that came in on the web form. Okay. So it would look exactly the same as this lead status. Okay. So that's my basic fields that I would pull onto my web form. I also have some advanced tools in here. So if, let's say, maybe you're creating a form for a job posting or something like that. I mean, there's other tools. You could use Zoho Recruit for that. That's kind of geared to that, but this is just the first example that popped into my head, that you could have them upload a resume, or upload an image of anything. So you could drag and drop the file upload onto the form, and then it gives you a file upload control on your form so that they can upload a file. And then when it comes into Zoho as a record, the file will be an attachment. Okay, and then the other thing I can do is there's a built-in CAPTCHA. So I can drag that on, and that will require them to enter the code. So it's a validation step. They'll have to enter the code in order to submit the form correctly, and that is to prevent web bots from clicking your buttons and giving you a bunch of empty crap forms. Okay, so those are our advanced tools that we have available to us. Up here in this top header section, I have some very basic formatting tools available to me. I can change the font family. Make the font look different. That didn't really even look like it changed at all. There we go. So I can pick, any kind of font from the list. I can make my font sizes smaller or larger. I can change the color of my font. I can change the color of the background. I can change my alignment. So right now it's set to left align. That's what right align looks like. And then there's top align. I personally prefer right align. And then I can change the width. The min is 600. I could go wider. Okay. And then I could hit the preview button to see what that's going to look like. Okay. So if there are no questions on just kind of our basic setup and our basic formatting on the form, we're going to click next step. And now here's where I define some of the rest of my details. So you'll notice when we did the preview, it came up untitled form. So here's where I list the form name. So we can call this Contact Us. Form location and landing page URL. These are intended to be full URLs. So you can see they have the HTTPS started there for you. For the form location URL, I can put a wildcard in for that and just put an asterisk. So that way I can put the form anywhere. If I want to have it in multiple places on my website, I can do that. So that's what I recommend. It's just easier and it doesn't lock you into any one specific page on your website. The landing page, however, does need to be a full URL because after the form is submitted, you will land on that specific page. So that does need to be a full URL. So I need to pop up, bear with me for a sec. I just want to pop up where I'm going to put this form, and I need to get my landing page URL. There we go. So to remember, okay, got it. All right, so so that's something that you obviously need to know in advance to be able to put that in here. So I'm just gonna grab that. Okay, and then just simply type that in. Okay, further on down here, our next step is to determine who will own this new lead record when it comes into the system. So I can choose a default user that will own them all. So in our system, we have these two users. So I could say it always will be owned by one particular user, or I could choose an assignment rule. And assignment rules are something that you again need to set up ahead of time. I could actually create it right from here, so we can demonstrate that real quick. So I do have a couple. No, I just have the one. So let's go ahead and we're going to pull that into class. So I'm going to create a lead assignment rule. So I click that link and it brought me to my lead assignment rule. And just like the way I started with the web form, I'm going to click this blue button to create a lead assignment rule. And I'm going to call this one round robin. Excuse me. And then I click my create rule entry. So I can now, this is where it would have been really good to have that record source field. But I can use my lead source field here as well, or my lead status field, my apologies. So when I say that the lead status is not contacted, so that can be my entry criteria. And then my ownership is I can just simply click this radio button. So assign to users from a round robin pattern. So, and I can just do that with either all my users, I can do it across one set of roles, or I can have created a group and use that group to do my round robin across. Okay, so I'm just going to pick users for this, and then I can add what users I want to have in my round robin. Okay. I just want to circle back up to here and say that really the best set of criteria for this would have been that that record source field that I talked about. So we could keep this in here as well, but my two hidden fields, my lead status is not contacted and my record source is web form, would be the right criteria to have put in here, because that will definitively identify any lead that's coming in off the web form. Okay, so my apologies for not having that field available for this round. So now I've set up who I want the what users are participating in the round robin. I can choose to add a follow-up task, but we're not going to do that for this demonstration. So we're going to say save. Okay. All right, so that is good to move for this lead assignment rule. Okay. All right, so let's go back to my web form. Okay, I'm going to hit refresh, and I've got my round robin. I'm going to click that. Okay, so we've set up the owner assignment to be this assignment rule of the round robin that we just created. Okay. As I move down, I have the option to add tags. So tags is a feature in the Zoho system that you can, create any kind of tag to be able to create or designate the record that gets created from the web form. So we talked about the record source field, and this is a way of another way of tagging that in your system. So we talked about adding that record source form, and it would have a couple different values, and we don't have that, but we do have the ability to add a tag to any kind of record on the fly. So I can do that here by just adding my web form tag to this particular form. Okay. Excuse me. And then a couple other options here. You can set up notifications for your form. So you can send an email notification to the person that's been assigned the lead. So it just gives them a heads up that they've got a new lead in the system and they need to work it. So I can click that. I can just set up a system generated standard email to let the new owner know, and it'll just pull, again, a system standard email to be sent. Or I could create my own email template to better format and send the information to the owner. So I have those two options. I could do system generated email or from mail template. And then from here, I can click on the select template and choose a template that I've already got. Okay, so I'm going to leave that on system generated email. Again, that's just going to be a system standard email to notify the new lead owner of their new lead that came in off the web form. Then we have acknowledge visitor. It's kind of similar. It's going to be sending a acknowledgement to the person that created the web form or that filled out the web form to just send a kind of a boilerplate email back to them saying, hey, we got your email, we got your form, we'll be back in touch with you. Okay, so that's the acknowledgement. And then there's some, if you have Sales IQ installed, you can enable visitor tracking. And there's also the approval piece that you can set up so that when, and it says right down here, records that do not satisfy validation rules will be automatically sent to the module for approval. And that's in a place in the module. Oh my goodness, excuse me so much. Okay, so if there are no questions on that, that's the finalizing our form by adding these additional details, and then I click save. So now I've got my form, it's got my fields, it's got my CAPTCHA control, it's got my file upload, it's got my hidden fields, all of that, and all of that is embedded in this source code. So I have options for how I want to get the form onto my website so that visitors can fill out information and submit forms to me. So I have three options of how I embed that code format. I can just copy and paste the source code. I can use a script embed, or I can use an iframe. So a couple things to keep in mind is, if you remember when we were building that form and we went over the format options, they are pretty basic. So if you wanted to have any kind of, dress up your form in any kind of way and make it look a little bit better, then you're looking at source code only. If you're good with the way it looks and you want a real simple, clean form, then embed or iframe are the best options to use to embed on the website. And the reason for that is that then it's still controlled within the Zoho web form definition. So if I set up my web form and I put it on the website and I embed it or use an iframe to put it on my website, then if I make changes in my web form in Zoho, it will automatically display in the website. Whereas when I use source code, any changes I make, I have to go back and change my source code as well. So I just want to make that distinction between those three methods of embedding our source code. Okay, so now we've got our form, and now we need to get it on our website so that it's available for people to fill it out. Excuse me. So our first couple steps was getting the fields on the form and adding in that extra information, and now we're ready to embed. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that and say done. So now we have our contact us form, and I have copied the code to embed it. So our next step is to get it on our website. So the first thing we're going to do is create the page. So I'm jumping right into this. This is Adobe Dreamweaver. So this is now, we're outside the scope of Zoho. And this is the tool that I am using to demonstrate adding the page to a website. If you use WordPress or Wix or any of those other development platforms, obviously this is not going to be the way that you add the page. You'll have to use whatever development tool that you use to create the site to add a page, or to add the form code to an existing page on your website. Okay, so for the purposes of this demonstration, I am going to create a new page. And I'm in the code for that page, and I'm just going to simply paste that code right in. So all that ugly code that I didn't have to write, I could just copy and paste it right in here. Okay, I'm going to change the title to demo form. And now I'm going to save it. And we're going to call it demo form. And we're going to just save it. Oops. Clearly, I have done this before. I already have one there. We're going to call this demo form 2. And we can look at demo form 1 as well. Okay, so I'm going to save that. And then again, this particular web development tool I just need to connect to my website and then upload my form. Okay, so so now we can go take a look at our form. I don't know which one that is. All right, so I'm just gonna navigate to where I put that form. Oops, HTML, not HTML, okay. And there's our form. So now our form is out on the web, and it's discoverable for anyone that comes along. And this is what it looks like. This is our basic form. So again, I can change the background color. I can change, all those rudimentary things by changing, in Zoho before I bring them in here. But once I have it in my development tool, once I have it in an HTML editor, I can do so much more. So I could change, and again, when it comes out of Zoho, it comes out in a table. So you can see, if you're familiar with HTML, you can see the table tags and the row and cell tags in here. So now once I have an HTML, I can do anything with it. I can create classes and add classes and style it any way I want to. Pay attention to the notes in here. So if you do go this route and come in here and make some changes and play around with it, just make sure you don't break anything that is there for the form to submit correctly to Zoho. So they usually are pretty good about identifying what code not to remove and not to change. So here is our return URL that we added in, and then these are some other some other fields that are hidden on the form that Zoho needs to correctly route this information and create the record when it gets posted to Zoho. So just be sure you don't break any of that. But again, I could come in here and change, and add styling to the table to make it look however I want it to look. Okay, moving down here, I want to point this out as well. So this script down at the bottom is this check mandatory function, and this is what controls what fields are required and what fields are not required. So right now I didn't add any of those. I didn't add any additional fields to be required. Probably should have. As a good example, we'd want email to be required. We want first name to be required. We want description to be required, things like that. So, again, as you're going through the process of creating your web form and you host it and you look at it and you could realize like, oh crap, I forgot to change the description to message. I forgot to make email required because of the way we've embedded it. Now we need to go back to our contact us form that we created, and we need to make those changes. So I want to make email required. I want to make first name required. And I wanted to change this label to message. Done. Okay. Next step. And I don't need to change any of that. Save. Okay, so now, because of the way I've put it on my form, I copied and pasted the source code. I've got to recopy and overpaste the source code. So you can see that if I spent a lot of time in my HTML editor and made changes to the formatting, and now I had to go back in and make some changes to my source code, now if I just simply copy and overpaste it, now I've lost all those changes. So it's very important to make sure that you get your fields and the right things set up so that you're not working inefficiently in adding your styling. Something else to note is if, say you go back and you add a field, you don't have to. You can copy and paste this code into another HTML file and then just pull out the part that you need to add to your form. So there's kind of ways to work around that, but it's good practice to just, before you make any changes to your source code, is to look at it, preview it, double check it, and make sure it's the way you want it. Because after that, making changes is kind of painful. So again, my recommendation would be, if you are good with the format that it comes out in, then use an embed or an iframe, because then it's just much better. So let's use an iframe or an embed. Let's do that. So this is my script. I'm going to copy that, and we're going to see what that looks like. Excuse me. So I'm going to create a new one. Okay, and actually, yeah, I was just double checking to see. I'm just trying to remember if it goes in the body or in the header, but I think it goes in the body. Okay, we're going to save this. So that's all that is just a line of script. And we're going to save this one as demo form embed. And we're going to save it in the same place. Oops. Bear with me while I just put it in the... Okay. And now let's go look at that one. Okay, that's our old one. And this is our embedded one. Okay, clearly I did not copy that correctly. I missed the all-important step of uploading the form to the website. Like, why isn't that coming up? That was my old one. Okay, so I needed to upload. Apologies for that. So I upload the form. Now I come back. Let me reload that. Now it should be there. And there it is. So you see it looks the same. So if we toggle back and forth, well, obviously it's going to be a little different because I made those changes. So it looks the same whether I do source or embed. But the benefit of the embed, like I said, is if I go and make a change, then I don't have to worry about copying, and updating my source code. It does it automatically. So we can see that real quick. If I go back in, and let's say I change this, and I say I make my message required. So that adds a little asterisk next to that. Next step, save. And now when I come back to this embedded form, done, and reload that, we'll see that the change is automatically updated. But as we saw on my other form where I copied the source code, none of my changes have been updated. I actually have to go and update that source code. Okay. All right, so that is the science of creating and uploading a web form on your website, again using Dreamweaver. The upload process is very dependent on what platform your website was developed on. So if you have any questions, if a lot of people are WordPress, Wix, we can use that for next web form class. I can show you how to upload that to WordPress using WordPress, because I believe our website is on WordPress. Okay, so then we can just fill the form out and create a lead record Test TMG live .net. Okay, I can upload a file. Just looking for a quick file. Always fun to have a cat face. Okay, and then I need to enter the CAPTCHA, 58E4, and submit. And now here I am on the page that I scripted, the thank you page, and let's go take a look at our lead. And here it is. So this is the lead I created. So here's the information that I put in, TMG Live, my name. Actually, this is not the one I created. This is the one from before. Okay, here's the one I just created because I put the test in there. So, so here's test, Marks Group Live. See, my lead status is not contacted. I didn't have to put that in. It came in as a default. Okay, and then we had the system. We set up the notification, and Corey kindly forwarded that to me. So here's the notification that came in. So here's what the standard notification looks like: web to lead notification, and it just has all of the information from the record. One other thing I want to demonstrate is going back to that form. I'll just go to this form. If I try to submit it, this is where that check mandatory function, it's telling me that the company field cannot be empty. So if I put something in the company field and I try to submit again, it's going to tell me last name cannot be empty. So any of the required fields, if they're missing, the first one that the function hits, that's the one it's going to put up. So that's how that works. So it will not let the form be submitted until all of the required fields have some value in them. And then once I have all my required fields, again, this is the initial cut at the form, then if I try to submit, it's going to tell me my CAPTCHA is not right because I didn't enter anything in for CAPTCHA. And it also comes with this reloading. So sometimes you get these and they're like, you can't even read them. So that's where the reload button is there, that they can hit reload and try to get one that's a little more readable. Okay. All right, so I'm trying to think if there's any other thing that I want to share related to web forms. I mean, that's pretty much it. So we went over how to build the web form and kind of the steps first, figuring out what information you want to gather. We had some best practice tips of not making your form, too long because then people won't fill it out. So you want to get just the right number of fields on there so you get enough information, but that it's not too cumbersome to fill out. So you design the form, then you build the form using the web form tool that we saw under the setup area. So we can go back there. So under the setup area, if you forgot that, so we hit setup, and that's where web forms is. So we use that tool to create a new web form, and it was a nice easy drag and drop interface to add the fields. We saw that we had some basic formatting options within Zoho that we can change colors, we can change alignments, things like that, change fonts and font size. Excuse me. And then we saw our embed options. So we could go full on source code, which gives us the maximum flexibility to change the form on our website, adding style and things like that. But we also saw that using an embed tag gives you the convenience of being able to make the changes in Zoho and have those changes automatically reflected. So that's kind of you got to decide which way you want to go there. And also know that I created a whole new page when I added the form. Let's go back in there. When I added the form on the website, I created a whole new page. You don't necessarily have to do that. We can add it to an existing page. So I've got a contact page already in here, and I've got you, so you can copy and paste that code. You can see it right in here. It's part of a page. So we can have a page on our website and just add the form as kind of a widget or a part of that page on our form. So we can have our header, our navigation, all of that surrounding our form, and just have the form be on the page. Okay. All right. So if there's no other questions, I'm looking at the chat. If there are no other questions, oops, we don't need to see my my books. Then I will sign off for now. So let's come back over here. So again, if there's no other questions on web forms and how to create web forms and how to embed web forms on a website, then we will go ahead and turn this into Q&A, and we'll leave it up for a couple more minutes for any last questions that might come in through the chat window, so that we can get a live answer. If after I close the chat window, you find that you have a question, please feel free to send an email to the support@marksgrouplive.com email address that you see there on the screen. And I guess that's it. So again, next time we run this class, we'll be sure to use show how to embed on WordPress, because I think a lot of the population uses the WordPress platform or framework to develop and maintain websites. So we'll demonstrate how to do that on WordPress. Okay. All right. So this was Suzanne teaching you about web forms in Zoho. And now I'm signing off. Have a great rest of your day, and we look forward to any questions that you might have about web forms. Thanks. Bye-bye.